everybody, and welcome to SitRep, the podcast for miniature wargaming in the modern era. This is episode 5. I'm your host, G, along with our co-hosts, Tim and Chris. Guys, why don't you shout out to everybody out there?
Hi, my name is Tim Spakowski. I am the owner of Special Artisan Service Miniatures, and I am a longtime gamer.
Hi, everybody. I'm Chris, and I'm Walkabout Games on Facebook, Instagram, and on YouTube. And that's with a Z, not an S, or a Z, depending on what part of the world you're in.
And I'm G, so I'm also a member of the Beast of War crew, slash on the table. Yeah, that's our new name. We're rebranding. We're in that process. It's a little painful at times, as you got to remember who you are. So there's split personalities. But the three of us get together about once a week, and we talk about probably one of our favorite genres, and that's the modern miniature wargaming. So we are going to encompass everything modern miniature wargaming. That could be from teeny weeny 3 mil all the way up to God knows what size. So this week, we always like to start off with a catch-up of what we've been doing over the past week. And Tim, we thought since you are on the show today and unfortunately didn't get a chance to be with us last week, that we'd give you first pick. So what have you been up to this week?
Well, this week I'm actually fulfilling orders of my new Spetsnaz that came out last week. So I've been busy with that. And one of the other ranges that I have made, or 28 millimeter, all my ranges are 28 millimeter. So I've got Boko Haram being casted right now this week, Boko Haram and European civilians. So they actually should be going out hopefully in the middle of this week. Also, I have Special Forces, U.S. Special Forces from Tora Bora, a new range, and those will be getting casted this week as well. I am working on my JLTV, and I released 3D renders for Russian Spetsnaz SPG-9. So just to add more to the new Spetsnaz line. That's about it.
That's about it, huh?
That's about it. That's a lot.
No,
not at all.
No.
So what about you, Chris?
This week I've been 3D printing up a storm. I've done a BTR 4-wheeled APC for my Ukrainians. And then I've done 2 BDR-M2 armored cars, one for each faction. And what else have I been working on? I've been working on some 20 mil and 28 mil buildings. So yeah, that's about all I've been working on this week. I haven't done a lot of painting, just a lot of printing and building.
You guys are putting me to shame, especially you, Chris, because my poor 3D printers are collecting dust right now, and you're really making me feel guilty about not getting them out and working. So as far as me for this week, it really hasn't been mini wargaming per se. It's more looking at upgrading the equipment for the podcast to bring it at the next level, sound quality-wise, and for future projects. Will we be including video in at some point, pictures, graphics? So I'm looking at working on that. We just did a little upgrade in the software we're using. For those who are curious, because everybody always asks, that's one of the things we get asked at Beast of War a lot is, what do you use? We're nothing that fancy for this podcast, but we're using Skype routed into OBS and then recording it from there. And then I take it into Adobe Audition and Adobe Premiere Pro to final post edits. And eventually what will happen is there will be 2 formats. You'll have the MP4 video format that's on the YouTube that you guys usually listen this to, and that way it enables us to use video and graphics if need be, and then there will be an actual MP3 download of the podcast as well. So eventually we plan on going out to Google Podcasts and Apple Music, I think is what they call themselves now. It's not iTunes anymore, it's just music, right?
No, it's it's music.
Okay, so that's the plan is. So it's going to be available on multi formats. It's just a matter of getting it set up. So it's an RSS feed, and it's available so Apple and Google can read the RSS feed so they can make it available on their formats as well. So that's all I've been doing this week.
Well, that is a lot of work, though. I mean, I'm sure, especially just trying to get everything to communicate with each other. That can be a pain in itself.
Yes, it sure can.
Yeah.
So, speaking of communicating, we should say who's sponsoring the show this week. And the sponsor for this week is that little company called, what is it called again? Oh, yeah, Special Artisan Service Miniatures. If you're looking for the latest and greatest in modern miniatures for your wargaming table, why not check out Special Artisan Service Miniatures? And you can find them where, Tim?
www.kingshobbiesandgames.com. When I have a whole section there for Special Artisan Service Miniatures, and I also sell paints or MIG and paintbrushes and stuff like that. But I too am slow in rebranding to completely SASM or Special Artisan Service. It just takes time.
Yeah, everything takes time. It's not like you don't have a million other things to do and you can only concentrate on one thing.
No, right.
So that's our sponsor this week. So guys, check them out. They make some amazing stuff. We talked about quite a few of your items last week, Chris. I talked about the boat you sent me and the Polish Grom. And Chris talked about several of the minis he got as well. So to everybody out there listening, definitely give them a check out and pick up some of those really nice minis. So this leads us to what's new this week. Part of what we do on this podcast is try and peruse the internet, whether it's Facebook, news blips, anything, to find out what's new and great this week. So, Chris, you had something that you'd like to talk about. I think it's
I noticed
book,
the
right?
guys. Yeah, I noticed the guys from Radio Dish Dash, the guys that make Skirmish Sangin. They've got a World War. I know it's not modern, but they've got. I'd like to give them a call out. They got a new World War II rule book coming out.
Yeah, I saw that's totally out of the blue.
Yeah, I was not expecting that. That looks really good. I'm waiting on a copy of Skirmish Sangin right now because I've heard such good things. So I'm looking forward to that, and I'm looking forward to seeing what they've done with a World War II rulebook. But I'm really hearing good things about Sangin, and I really want to try it. But as soon as I saw that World War II book, I was like, I got to bring that up. That looks really cool.
Yeah, that looks really interesting. I love the cover art for it.
It's amazing.
And if they bring to World War II what they've brought for the modern, it's gonna be pretty cool. I'm looking forward to it myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The last episode you guys talked about squad leader and stuff. That it's not gonna be squad leader, but that. If it's like Skirmish Sangin, it's gonna have that feel to it.
Yeah,
So
I'm looking forward to it. Other than that, Other than Tim's already mentioned his SPG9, that was the other new release that I saw this week. I haven't seen too much else, but I'm looking forward to getting Skirmish Sangin and trying it out, and I was quite impressed by that they were releasing a World War II book because I hadn't heard anything.
Yeah, I had not either, and I'm actually looking at their site right now, and for whatever reason, I don't even see an update on the site, but I know on the Facebook page it's there. So
yeah,
we'll definitely get pictures up and a link up for you guys, because part of our discussion last week is what do we consider the era of the modern war game or modern era, and we pretty much the consensus was Vietnam was pretty much the start of it. But, if you want to get technical, I guess you could go all the way back to World War II. They had engines. Does that make it modern? So, it's nice to see them branching out from their, their rule sets into a little bit something else, because it's going to grow their market share. Because, World War II is still probably the most popular era to game in.
Mm-hmm.
That I think, I can recall, I thought Napoleonics was, but I don't know. I think World War II has edged it, but
I think it's topped it.
You know what's funny? I was just thinking, I wonder when it's going to get to the point where the war on terror, or whatever they're calling it these days, will be ended. So then, we just play a war on terror, just like how we refer to World War II and Vietnam.
Yeah.
It's like how many years does things have to? I guess it has to stop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To have a bookend of that's when I just that thought came to my mind. It's because now, like you guys said, we just use the term modern.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it is interesting because the war on terror, as we know it now, encompasses technically three-ish countries. Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, but then you have Libya. It can go on. It's really going to be its own category in itself, just like World War II. If you want to get nitty gritty, you could say the European theater, the Pacific theater. Russia, so I guess just depends
everywhere.
on how in depth you want to get with it. But yeah, that's a good question. When will it end? I have a lot of friends that are still in the military that would love to know the answer to that one themselves. So.
Yeah,
I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure.
So yeah, that it is interesting, and it's good to see them doing a product outside of their norm. It will be interesting to see how it relates to their rule set because, like we said in last week's episode, when you play the game of Skirmish Sangin, it has that RPG feel to it. There's a little bit more math calculation into it because it's percentages. And then, you're really getting the nitty gritty of each individual soldier in your squad or your platoon. So you really feel that ownership. So I'm wondering if that's going to translate to this game as well, which would be really awesome. Because I do play Bolt Action and Flames of War and what's the other one? Command. The guys out of Two Fat Lardies.
Oh, Chain of Command.
Chain of Command. So, they all have their own unique little item to them. So it'd be really nice to see how this translates as well.
Mm-hmm.
So moving on, what else is new? So one of the things that caught my eye this morning was when I was looking through Facebook, in one of the groups that we belong to, somebody posted, there's an app out there for Apple phones right now called Eraser, which basically lets you take whatever your pictures, whatever you're shooting in photography, so in this case miniatures or models, and put it in any scenario or background as you like. So it kind of like erases the background, and then you can easily, interject. So say you had some Russian troops, you could put them in, the Ukraine. So you could take a picture of somewhere in the Ukraine and superimpose that into it so it makes it look more realistic. Which is pretty cool. So that kind of led us into, let's talk a little bit about photography. When, if you want to shoot pictures of your models or your game tables or, if you're painting video and stuff like that, because there's a couple people out there that do a really good job of photography on their models. One of them is a friend that I don't know if you guys know, Andy Zeck. Andy. He's been a member of Beast of War, and he's been to a couple of the boot camps, and I think he's actually going to the one in a couple of weeks. As a matter of fact, they're doing another Bolt Action one in Ireland.
Bolt Action.
So he does a really good job of photography on his minis. I mean, he does really good work on his minis. So the question is, or the topic is photography. What's the best apps? What are the best cameras? What are the best setups? I can tell you what we use here when we do photography and video, but it's a little bit more on the pro level per se. You can do some really effective work with a camera phone and the proper lighting and backdrop. Chris, what do you use?
An iPhone 6.
Do you use any kind of special lighting or backdrops?
I have a photo box, a portable photo box that has its own lighting and everything, and just it packs into a suitcase, and then it packs out and folds out, and it's got daylight bulbs and different kinds of filtered backdrops and stuff like that. And then I use an iPhone 6, and you can get some pretty impressive photographs with your phone nowadays.
Oh yeah.
But the one thing that I always tell people, turn off your flash.
Oh, yeah.
Always turn off your flash. Yeah.
Yeah, you don't want to direct on flash because it just whites out, it just pretty much burns out and overexposes your subject. Tim, what do you use?
Well, I have a little light studio box, probably something similar that Chris has. And I have, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lights with 60-watt LED daylight bulbs around that box. And I have several backdrops from Hangar 18, who makes really, really cool backdrops. And I have an iPhone as well as an iPad Pro and an iPad Mini. And there are times that if the planets are aligned correctly, or if the gods are not looking favorably on me that particular time, I'll take a picture with the iPhone and it will look like crap. And then I'll take it with my iPad Pro and it will look amazing. So taking photographs of miniatures is one of my it's a pain because you spend tons of hours painting figures so that they can be taken photographed, photo quality, and then you take a picture. What the?
Yeah, it looks like. Yeah, it doesn't look like.
It's
amazing how much the camera picks up that your eye doesn't.
Yeah, and it's not telling the story. So I remember. I mean, I'm not kidding you. I think this was last week. I was taking photos of some of the Spitsnaz or something, and it just would not come out good for whatever reason. So I went upstairs, got my iPad Pro, came right down, took one picture. It was perfect. So it's like I lit a candle that day and said thanks. And I don't know. It's frustrating as heck to me. And I've gone to a lot of the YouTube videos on photography, photographing your minis, and I set up the way they talk about setting up the lighting in the light box, and sometimes I do really good and sometimes I don't. I'm curious what you use, G, as far as the professional level, but I'm also curious for how guys are taking photos of their war game table so that those photos are of the same quality that you would take from a light box, so that they can be used in publications and stuff.
Yeah. So we basically, to start out, we started out pretty much the same way you guys did. We do use a light box. We use a rather large one. It's a collapsible one, so it is portable because the original intention is we were going to take it to conventions and use it to photograph, the amazing new releases, or, somebody had a really nice paint job in a contest, something like that. But then it's, when you only have a crew of a couple people, it becomes too much. So, but we still use it. That's what we use is the light box. We do have, backdrops for it. But what I use right now for a lot of the stuff that I'm doing, if they're smaller scale, is there's a company called tablewar.com. They do the fat mats.
Oh, yeah.
They have a setup called the macro mat, and I actually backed it on Kickstarter, and it's just a simple stand with like 3 different background mats. There's like a blue gradient one, then there's a kind of a bluish, purplish, I don't know, almost like a mist type background, and then there's a reddish version of that as well. And we use those in the back, and it does a really nice job. So, and it's made out of neoprene material, like your wetsuit material, the play mat material. So we use that, or we use the light box, and we do use daylight bulbs because that's pretty neutral. And then we can do our white balance and our exposure settings off of that to make sure we're getting the right temperatures. And for camera wise, I here in this studio on the US side, we use Panasonic GHs. I'm actually going to upgrade into probably either a Nikon full frame or a Canon, so either a Canon Mark IV, 5D Mark IV, or a Nikon 800, 810, somewhere in there. Reason being is when we want to shoot minis, you want to do a lot of bokeh. That's where you're blurring out the background, and the GHs, since they are mirrorless cameras, they have a 2 crop factor, which means they make everything look 2 times closer. And it's really hard to get good bokeh on that. Whereas with a full frame, you can really separate your subject matter from the background and blur that background really nice. So it's nice and smooth, and it really brings out the detail. So that's the plan. And you always, always, always have to use a tripod. It's very hard to shoot minis non-tripod because you might lose your focus spot. So if you want them really crystal clear, you have to use a tripod. And lighting is very important. And also your focal distance. A lot of people think they've got to take their camera and zoom it so tight into the mini, that when you take the picture, you start seeing the brush strokes. If any little imperfection really stands out. So if you back out a little bit and take your picture, and if you need to crop it in a little bit, it'll look much better. It won't be as, it won't show imperfections as well. So
what?
No, go ahead.
What lenses? Well, I'm sorry to cut you off.
No, you're fine.
So you talked about the camera bodies, but what lenses are you going to purchase for the macro shooting?
Well, we will probably go with a 50. You got to go with a 50. No, it's in photography world, it's called a nifty 50. The 50 is like that ideal lens for street photography. You can use it for really good, just general photography. If you're doing portraiture, you want to go 85 mil. So you want a good 85 mil because that's basically what the eye sees. And then if you're going to do a lot of minis, you're going to want a good macro lens. So it's just a matter. You're just going to need a couple different lenses, and get a good macro lens that it gets you really nice, close, tight focus point on subjects that are near. So it's really those. You might want to go with a 20 millimeter lens for wide shots. Especially if you want to do tables and things. So it's really a matter of finding what works for your subject matter. But I'd say a 50 and 85, a good macro lens are good starts, and then maybe a 20 mil. Because if you're doing full frame, a 20 should be really nice for wide shots. You don't want to do a fisheye because that puts that really goofy, curve on it, and it just doesn't look right. So I would say start with those and go from there. A lot of the bodies you can buy it with a kit lens. They're okay, but they're not spectacular.
Right.
If you can handle your camera, there are non-OEM brands. Like Sigma is one. There's a couple other brands out there where they may not even be full auto, where you might have to do some manual adjustment on it, but you can get a pretty good picture with those. You just have to do a little extra work. So it's just a matter, it depends on your budget and what you're doing it for. We used our cameras for magazine layouts. I don't know if you guys knew this, but Beast of War, we did a magazine called Reroll, and we did it for like 4 months, and it was an amazing magazine. It was a digital magazine, and we did a lot of photography in that. And unfortunately, we didn't realize how much work went into producing a digital magazine of that quality. So we haven't done it recently, but they've added several more people to the editing crew. So I don't know, maybe we'll bring it back at some point. But you really have lighting is probably your most important aspect, because you can have the most beautifully painted miniature. You could have a really great camera, but if your lighting sucks, your pictures, they're just trash. And you can only do so much in post. We'll take them and put them into Lightroom and try and clean them up. And there have been times where, we've had to go back and reshoot 2 or 3 times just because it just doesn't look right. What you see with your eye, but what the camera sees, even when you're looking at the viewfinder, sometimes when you go into the computer and blow it up, it just doesn't look right. That's another thing. I would try and get the highest megapixel camera you can get, because especially if you're going to do web or print, you want to be able to blow things up and not look pixelated. So the more megapixels you got, the more detail your camera will capture. So, and obviously the bigger the sensor. So that's why we're moving from a mirrorless camera to a full frame, because it uses a big, sensor, and it captures more light much better.
Cool.
So that's our little tidbit. So, after you get the pictures, depending on whatever camera you're using, there's, editing software. And I know a lot of the phones have their own editing software. You can put it into Lightroom. Windows, I think Windows come with a basic video or picture editing software, and I believe Apple does too. So
that's what I use. The one on my Apple.
So there's a really good app that I use called Snapseed. That is I believe a Google. It's made by Google, but it's a free app.
Oh, okay. Snapseed. All right.
Yeah.
We'll make sure we put a link in for that.
Yeah.
You guys have any other suggestions or anything regarding photography and miniatures?
Pay somebody to do it.
I know I'm working on getting more lighting.
Yeah.
It's that important, especially like I want to get more lighting in my games room so that we can do more on the table stuff where we can take pictures. But right now, it's the overhead light. Oh, it's just terrible.
Yeah. A good workaround that's not terribly expensive, you can get it on Amazon, is you get some of these video light setups, the collapsible ones.
Yeah.
We actually use a couple in the video studio just for supplemental light, because we have 250 watt LED bulbs in the ceiling in our can lights that show down, but they're diffused, so they throw softer light. That's the other thing. You don't want harsh light. It has to be diffused. If you have harsh light, you're going to get harsh shadows, and that just doesn't look good. So you want to diffuse it. And then we have those big standy collapsible video lights, and we've changed out the bulbs. They came with like 75 watt fluorescent lights. They were supposed to be like daytime rated. They're okay. The light just didn't look right. So we changed them over to LEDs, nice big bulbs. And now, it's good to have a lot of light because you can tune down your camera for exposure, and definitely use your zebra stripes in your cameras. A zebra stripe is what sets your exposure, so it tells you if something's overexposed or not. So, and definitely white balance. So you get those set up, you'll get some really good pictures.
Awesome.
So if you guys out there have any suggestions or questions regarding photography or even video, post them below in the show notes. Now we're on the Facebook page of SitRet Podcast, and we will definitely answer those questions for you or address them on the next podcast. So with that, another topic that we want to talk about this week is what is too big. And what I mean by that is, are we talking scale or the actual miniature count? So what scale is too big? So what I mean by that is, you can go from 3 mil all the way up to 28 mil or even bigger than that. So is there a scale you would consider too big to play a modern miniature war game with?
Well, there are some companies that do 1/48 scale figures, and I know guys who game 54 millimeter.
Yeah, I used to game 54 mil.
And I guess if you're going to do, say, 54 millimeter or 1/35 scale World War II, then you're set, because there's tons of plastic kits out there. And there's some sort of, buildings and terrain, and it makes it a lot easier to find really cool stuff for the table, for diorama type looking tables, because there's a ton of companies out there that make the stuff. I think personally, when I look at scale, I definitely see what's out there that supports it, so that I don't have to worry about getting stuff and then fudging things to, try to make it. So I think for me, 28 millimeter is great. And as I love terrain. So storing terrain, especially at 28 millimeter, and you have a lot of it, it gets starting to be a hassle. So I would think it would be a bear even at 54 millimeter.
Oh yeah. Can you imagine? I mean, Chris, how did you do it?
I had a lot of buildings that I could flat pack.
Oh, okay.
Huh.
Yeah, so they kind of all locked together, and it was back in the days before rare earth magnets, so I just would use the old black magnets.
Oh.
Yeah. They didn't stay together very well compared to, like, let's say, rare earth magnet, but they stayed together well enough. But 54 mil, I only did that in skirmish style games.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I couldn't imagine doing large, mass battles.
Crazy.
I did see, I think it was last week on the miniatures page, some guy shared pictures, 54 millimeter Waterloo that he was playing with his son in his backyard.
Yeah.
Wow. So
what H.G. Wells.
What era did you play, Chris?
I played Napoleonics, ACW, Steampunk. Steampunk, I still have all the, because I used to play the GDW Space 1889. And I've still got all that still. And I used to, when I had my company, I used to manufacture a line of French Indian War in 54 mil.
Oh, no kidding.
And I still have the molds and stuff for that. I used to play a lot of World War II as well in 54 mil, and then it just you run out of space. Where am I going to store this?
How big is a tank in 154 scale? A Sherman.
135th, 132nd scale.
Okay.
Yeah, so they're big.
Yeah.
And it's too hard to store. So I started selling it all off, and I went into 15 mil World War II because it was just easier to store.
But I bet it was easier to paint.
It was too.
Yeah.
Less detail, a lot faster to paint, a lot faster to build. Yeah, but me personally, the perfect balance I'm finding is 20 mil.
How so?
Because the detail's there in the miniatures. So my enjoyment of painting it is there. The building is really nice. The scale of the battlefield and your feeling of if you're doing a flanking maneuver or you're sending out your recce and all that kind of stuff, it feels better in some ways than 28 mil, unless you've got a huge table. But 20 mil just feels right. It's a good balance between the 28 mil and the 15 mil to me. I don't get me wrong. I love my 28 mil for certain eras, in certain styles of game, but 20 mil to me is just the perfect size in between the two scales. It just looks really good and it feels right.
So which leads me to the question, how did 28 become so popular?
I know 15 mil was one of the more popular scales for historicals, but it seems that 28 mil has become the thing. I think it's also, you've got more manufacturers seem to be putting out 28 mil.
Yeah.
Like Warlord and stuff, Perry's. But I don't know when that happened. Because when I first started playing historical gaming, it was 15 mil. That's what it was. It was all you saw the guys playing was 15 mil. Now seems to be 28 mil.
Do you think that's with the advent of more games going from mass to skirmish? They wanted a larger scale.
Larger scale?
Yeah.
Yeah, because we see our skirmish games in the last even 10 years going even bigger. 32 mil.
Yeah.
We're seeing a lot more larger scale miniatures now. But I think the advent of plastic miniatures, like good quality plastic miniatures, and they've come out in that 28 mil scale or heroic 28 or whatever. I think that's one of the reasons as well. Manufacturing.
Tim, what do you find? I mean, you do exclusively 28 mil, or do you do different scales as well?
I do them all. I have a ton of 15 millimeter Napoleonics. I have cores and cores and cores for a set of rules called Empire. And I know some people who might be listening just cringed. But when I was 15, I met a group of guys who I still game with today who got me into Napoleonics. And at the time, that's what they all had were 15 millimeter. And speaking with the guy, Craig, just recently, he says, yeah, if I had to do it all over again, I'd do 28 millimeter.
Oh, really?
I also play 15 millimeter American Civil War. I do have some 15 millimeter World War II. I have a ton of 20 millimeter World War II and modern. But as I've gotten older and my eyes have changed, I do prefer 28 millimeter because I think a lot of guys, I know myself, when I was heavily into 20 millimeter, I was trying to bring the modeling world on my own table to 20 millimeter. Have really cool setups, add a lot of stowage, just really cool things that are made in 54 millimeter and have it for 20. And I got pretty close to it, but I still and I'd spend all that time painting it and building it, and then you put it on the table, still small to me. So with 28 millimeter, modern 28 millimeter, and just 28 millimeter in general growing in popularity, that's where I went. I inherited a large collection from my main teacher, and I have medieval armies in 25 millimeter and ancients and stuff like that. So I think when I was a kid, 25 millimeter was the rich man's game.
Oh.
When you would look at War Games Illustrated or other, because the internet wasn't really there from the World Wide Web perspective. So you were still just with magazines. You'd see the 25 millimeter armies and Napoleonics and American Civil War and knights and stuff. So there was a group of guys in St. Louis, where I'm from, who were of that class and who brought me into that class. But they were in that class. Those guys did have the large 25 millimeter, beautifully painted armies. And so then 40K came out with Rogue Trader with 28-ish millimeter size.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And then over the years, you've seen the increase, like Chris says, or you said about the heroic size. So
yeah,
I think with the difference in technology now, that the ability to make really, really cool looking figures and terrain and vehicles and all the extra battlefield pickup stuff from, and I guess this is a segue into our 3D printer discussion, but for 3D printers, you now have that ability to create it in 28 millimeter and put it on your table, and it looks really cool. So all of my painting now is at 28 millimeter. Now, I also have a ton of 6 millimeter. My friend Bill and we own a company called Command Operations Center, where we traveled across the United States and put on games for military units before Iraq and after, and all sorts of stuff. So we have I have a whole town in 6 mil of Bosnia.
Wow.
And Jablanenka. And so I love micro armor. Micro armor is cool. And you can get a really cool setup. I have a 6x12 table, so I have that whole thing set up with micro armor in a city. I should show you guys pictures of it, and I can post pictures if people ask. But I also think, and I know I'm rambling, but I also think scale is becoming a generation thing. There's still a ton of guys who, I'm 45, so there are still a ton of guys my age and older that are really hanging on to 20 millimeter because they have a ton of it.
Yeah.
And, there's a company writing modern rules strictly for 20 millimeter, and that's what they're doing, and that's fine. But I personally think it is not a group, it's not a scale that is increasing in popularity. It's only taking care of the 20 millimeter gamers, because the new gamers coming into wargaming, if they haven't played any type of wargaming, is going to 28 millimeter. One, because their buddies have it, but also the guys who are heavily into 40K, who are used to bigger scales, they're the ones going to bolt action, and then they're also going to skirmish modern gaming. So they're going 28. So I don't think that the 20 millimeter is a sustainable scale for growth. I think it's maintaining its population, but I don't see an increase in it. I could be completely wrong. That's just my opinion.
Now that you say that, I'm just thinking back. I can't remember any company that truly does a lot of promoting in 20 mil. We know there are.
Elheim.
Yeah.
So, Matt Hingley from Elheim, I love the guy to death. He is a great sculptor. He is doing awesome things now with 3D stuff, and he's providing the community, the 20 millimeter community, really nice looking modern vehicles. And so he is lucky because, I can't think of another modern company that's sculpting stuff in 20 millimeter. There is, was it Fire? I can't think of the guy's name. He just came out with 28 millimeter Rhodesian figures.
Ooh.
But anyway, but that's it. So he's in a niche in himself, and he's perfect. He's in a perfect situation. But, people have asked me why, Tim, why don't you do 20 millimeter as well? And I says, well, because Matt's doing a great job, and I don't want to add any more, competition or crap to it. It's like, you want modern 20 millimeter? Go to Elheim.
That's who I buy a lot from.
Right. Yeah.
Matt just sent me a bunch of backpacks, actually.
Oh, perfect.
Just a couple days ago.
He's a great guy. I mean, he helped me out a lot when I was getting up far force on force doing 20 millimeter. I did a lot of painting for him, and you can see some of my work on his site. And he just does great work. And he's now doing weapons in 20 millimeter, and he's sculpting them with his traditional sculpted figures. So, but I just don't see new gamers getting into 20 millimeter. Again, I could be completely wrong, and I do not mean to disrespect anyone. That's just my opinion.
Yeah.
So
I'm old, so that's why I'm stuck with 20 mil.
I mean, Chris, do you feel that way, that that 20 mil is just kind of there, and there's not a lot of promotion or growth in that scale, and that people, just because there's quite a bit of it out there from days and years past?
There's some diehard 20 millimeter gamers that are kind of starting to get into 28 millimeter modern.
Yeah.
I'm not going to drop names, but so that's funny seeing that.
Yeah.
After years of 20 millimeter is the scale, blah blah blah. Now they're doing 28 millimeter.
Yeah. Well,
I think that's because a lot of people that are wanting to play with newer, younger gamers who are getting into the hobby, and that's what they got.
Yeah. Well,
that's what they're used to.
Yeah. You got to still look at it that it's a business. You got to go where the customers are. I mean, no matter what genre or scale or whatever you truly prefer, if you're in the business of war games and everybody's playing it at this scale, but you prefer this scale, if you want to be successful, you go where the customers are. So,
right.
So that leads me to the question is there an ideal mini count for a game? So me being a longtime gamer and starting out in Napoleonics and American Civil War, and I think ours were 20 mil back then when we were making our own minis and covering the basement floor with them. I'm a big fan of the big mass battles. That was one of the reasons why I liked Warhammer Fantasy mass battles.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of the reasons why I liked Epic mass battles. So from a modern wargaming aspect, I don't honestly see us having, in a true life situation, mass battles anymore. They're pretty surgical, with drone technology and aircraft. In the first Gulf War, we had, when we pushed across to past Kuwait into Iraq, and then in the second one, when you had the drive to Baghdad, you had a few tank battles here and there. But I don't know if I consider them mass battles, if you will, in the real sense, like World War II. So then it leads to, okay, so is it exclusively squad / team / platoon size? Do you get the company size? What do you think is ideal?
I would say platoon is the even, like the good size, and I think that carries over for 28 mil, 20 mil, and most people's average table sizes.
Mm-hmm.
Like most people have a 4x6 table usually, or 4x8, and I think platoon level is usually where the nice spot is. In smaller scales, I love company and battalion level, but I think in your 15 to 28 mil, I think platoon level is usually where everybody's nice balance is.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think it correlates to the size of the minis. If you're at 28, you're going to be squad, platoon. You could push it with a company, but that might get the table a little crowded, especially even on a 4x8 table. If you're really getting the nitty gritty of it. If you get down to 20 or 15, you could do especially at 15, you could easily do company size. I guess it just depends on the scale you're playing, the rule set. Obviously some rule sets are better set up for squad, platoon level than company level. It's just, I guess it's a matter of what game you're looking to play.
Yeah.
I have a friend of mine in my gaming group. He plays bolt action with 15 millimeter.
Yeah.
And he has massive battles. He's kind of tweaked the rules a little bit for number of squads moved and that sort of thing. But that's a very good example. He's got a lot of 15 millimeter. He is getting close to retirement. He doesn't want to spend any more money. So what do I got to play with? I got 15 millimeter. Okay, well, I'm going to see if bolt action works. And it does. And that's, happy with him. I am like you. I love mass battles. I mean, we've done Waterloo here, my house, twice in 15 millimeter.
Nice.
We were getting ready to do Gettysburg. I love it. It's just really cool because it's a different type of warfare. And maybe now we're getting out of modern gaming, but that's a whole different type of warfare with different tactics and strategy that is not really taught to a lot of the newer gamers today.
Yes. I mean, if you look at the games, so, yes, getting out of the genre the show's about, but look when Warhammer Fantasy went away and they brought in Age of Sigmar. You went from mass battles to, skirmish. And it's like that for a lot of things. You hear it all over and over in this industry. We hear it a lot because we report on it. People getting away from mass battles to go to skirmish. I don't have enough time. I don't want to invest the time. I don't want to invest the money. I don't want to invest the effort into painting and putting together mass armies. But then on the same side, yes, you can play a faster game in skirmish, and you have to paint less minis, et cetera, et cetera. But there isn't that feel of command of the battlefield. You're playing squad level, platoon level. You're so focused in on such a narrow avenue of the battle, whereas when you're playing mass battles, you do feel like you have command of the battlefield. What's this company doing over here? What's this? So it's a totally different experience, at least for me.
It's funny. Now I'm remembering all the topics I wanted to talk about that I failed to write down yesterday, and I think this is a generation issue because, when we were younger, I think we're all about the same age. We put together models. We crafted things more. We took the time to make things because we didn't have the Antichrist distraction of the internet. So nowadays you have the younger generation who their attention span isn't. And so that helps them with, okay, I only have an hour or whatever, so I'm going to paint up a small squad, and I still get the feel of gaming. Oh, wait a minute, I just got a text. So it's very difficult to get that mindset onto painting mass armies and having mass battles.
Yeah.
It's interesting though, because, and maybe G, you have more of an insight into this than I do. There was rumors that they were talking about bringing fantasy, like edition 3 kind of like back, Warhammer 3rd edition in a way, because I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I've kind of heard rumor of it, but there's nothing confirmed. GW, they keep things pretty tight to the vest.
So I think eventually we will see a swing back.
Oh, it's like anything else. You're going to see. It's just, it's what I call a market correction.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
And you know what the lesson to that is? Don't sell your minis.
Yeah. Or don't burn them.
Don't burn them?
Yeah.
Oh, my God. Oh, my God. Are you referring to that YouTube video?
Yes.
Well, so, yeah, someone didn't take their medication that day or something. I don't know. but yeah, I love mass battles. And what does that mean? Well, that means you're downstairs or you're gaming for at least 8 hours.
Yeah.
And a lot of people cringe, like 8 hours. I just want to game. I want to spend all this money, spend all this time painting, and then gaming in an hour and then leaving.
Yeah.
I don't get that. I don't get that at all. So that's what weekends are for. That's when I have the big mass games. So I'm off my soapbox.
So I don't think anybody has a consensus of what the perfect mini count is. I think it's based upon the game you're playing,
Right.
the genre, the era. In a modern setting, I'm thinking company size. Now, we talked about this last week, Tim, was when we talked about Team Yankee and taking it, like for me, I scaled it down to 3 mil, using Pico and putting it on a regular 4x8 table, which should give you more realistic ranges. So, in that case, I could do a battalion size game in 3 mil.
Right.
So it's just a matter of scale, and how many minis. So
I've thought about using Team Yankee for my 6 mil, and I know guys are doing that. I just all the 6 mil that I have are everything, including infantry, is individually based.
Yeah.
But that was because of the type of games that we're running with the military, and we would have 6 mil games in the town, and we'd have, say, firefights. So then if we were in facilities that we could do that in, we would then leave and we'd have actually force on force using simunitions with the people that we were gaming with.
there you go.
Yeah.
So, but those were all individually based. So I don't know if that would work well with Team Yankee, because you're still using a base with 4 or 5 guys on it for if it's kind of like Flames of War.
Yeah, I mean, if you're doing it at the smaller scale than the 15 that it was designed for, for me, like I can do a whole troop of tanks, a whole squadron on one base. 3 mil. It's okay, here's Troop A.
Yeah, right.
And here's Troop B, C, and so on and so on. So I have my whole company on 5 or 6 bases, and then if you have mechanized support, you've got your APCs with your infantry stands. So you can simulate in this way. You're not moving around. Obviously, at 3 mil, you couldn't move around individual. The way they're set up, but that would be a royal pain. But you would definitely get that feel of fire maneuver and realistic ranges, because like we were saying, an M1 can shoot from a half mile away and hit a target. Whereas if you're doing it in 15 mil on a 4x6 table, it's like only a couple hundred yards. So it's not truly realistic. I mean, it's a great. When we did the boot camp a couple of years ago, it was a lot of fun. It was great to put all this armor on the table and just slug it out. But if you're looking for that realism, you obviously want to lengthen the table and shorten your models. So I think it's great. That's the nice thing about wargaming. You can go on any scale to change up the flavor of it and play the same game and just change those the environment essentially, and it's a total different experience. So it's just a matter of what you're looking for. If you're looking for something fast and easy to play, you play it at the scale it was designed. If you want something more realistic, then you might change that scale to something smaller so you get further ranges and give you an idea what it was really like or would be like.
Yeah, that's like I was saying for, the rule system I was talking about last week was that you don't measure for ranges. Because the modern weapons have such long ranges nowadays that if you're on the tabletop, unless you're playing with 3 mil or 6 mil, then, I guess you would want to measure. But most modern weapons in 28 mil can easily shoot the entire length of the board.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that's where Force on Force got it right.
Yeah.
Because, Sean basically says, hey, yes, this M4 can fire from this length, the entire length of the table. So there is no range. However, we will give you, if it's under 12 inches, we'll give you a +1 or something, for close range. I think they did it spot on. I think the modern rules that are going with, okay, this is a particular caliber bullet, and this is a particular rifle, and it can shoot X amount of range. Oh, who gives a crap? Just, going to hit. It's going to penetrate through drywall. It's going to penetrate through cars. It's got range. But yeah.
So, leading into a really fun topic, not really, is what I have termed in our running order here as the death of your favorite local gaming store. The reason I bring this up is that this past week on Facebook, our favorite local gaming store here outside of Chicago has announced that they are going to close their doors at the end of this month, to which is a total
Which one
shocker.
is that?
Dragster Games.
Oh.
So, it came out of the blue. We've known Dan since, he opened his doors 5 years ago. He's only, been around for 5 years. And it was a really great store. He's seen his ups and downs, obviously, and he just said it's not financially viable anymore. Which is a darn shame, because it is pretty much the closest game store to where we are. And, unfortunately, our life has been so hectic lately. We have not been out there as much as we like to be. So in a way, we feel kind of responsible. If we haven't been that available, does that mean other people haven't? Because, everybody's lives are so crazy. But the question that came to mind is, how does this affect gaming? Do a lot of people revolve their gaming experience around a game store, or are they mostly, their home or friend's home? Because what I think of is when I talk to our friends over in the UK, they have gaming clubs, and they meet weekly at their gaming club. And I know other places have gaming clubs as well, but in our area, we truly don't have the gaming club in the sense they do it. So our friends over in Ireland, obviously they use the Beast of War home studios as their gaming club. So they meet, I think, on Tuesday nights and sometimes Sundays. Then the guys that live in England, they have a gaming club that meets Monday nights or something like that. And they actually rent out what their version of like a VFW hall. Everybody pays a monthly fee, and that goes towards the rent of the hall. And they have a closet they get, and they store their game table terrain and stuff in there. And they meet there once a week, and they play games. And so we don't really have something like that here. I know there are some that exist. It's not like they totally don't. But my question is, when you have the closing of a game store that's local to you that you visit, do you feel the impact? Does it affect your gaming in any way, shape, or form?
Well, as a former store owner, it did affect the local community a bit when I closed.
Mm-hmm.
But somebody stepped up to the plate and gave everybody a place to play again. I don't know whether it probably did slow things down for games played for about a year. But I think a lot of people were still playing in their homes.
Okay.
But you know what? I think depending on your community, I think most people they play at their local store. I don't know. I think a lot of people live in apartments and small basement suites, and they don't have room for tables and stuff like that. So they have to have somewhere to play. I think it's kind of sad that you see the demise of local stores. But I think in North America, I think the majority of people play in their local stores.
Yeah.
Whereas in Europe and England, Ireland and stuff, they have clubs. And they have lots of conventions as well.
Yeah, they have a lot of little individual conventions.
Yeah, they've got a lot. And, for a while there, I don't think they had a lot of stores. They had people that would set up stalls at these conventions, and that's where they would be. But I think you're seeing a lot more stores open in the UK for sure.
Yeah.
But I think in my town, there's no club. It's just your local game store. But where I used to live, which was a major city in BC, in British Columbia, they did have a large club, and it would be once a week we would meet on a Sunday and play games, and then there'd be somewhere to store all your scenery and stuff like that. And I'd like to see more clubs. I think they're a great thing. And I think stores should work with clubs to, because I think that's a good combination. And I think they should work with, because the clubs could help the stores, because we're seeing a lot of demise of stores because, you know, they can't they're not keeping up with new technologies.
Yeah.
Keeping up with, you know, the internet, as they say, you know.
That's true. And, you know, another observation related to this game stores, when he opened his doors, he did have, like, there was a Flames of War club that played, I think, once a week, Bolt Action, you know, and then I don't know what happened, but they stopped coming to his store, you know, and they went elsewhere. So I don't know what happened in there. I think part of it is, you owned a store at some time, Chris. I've owned a store, not miniature related, but, you know, in the scuba diving industry. And Tim, you're in the business as well. Sometimes you get burnout. You know, things just aren't going your way, or you're having problems with a distributor or manufacturer, and sometimes some negativity leaks out, you know, and creeps over. Yep. And I think that was part of the problem. You know, like he had some issues with Battlefront or something, getting some, you know, materials in. You know, that's nothing new. Everybody's heard about that.
Yeah, we all have that problem.
Yeah. So, you know, it just, I think some of that negativity has leaked out, and it kind of drove some people away. His biggest product was Magic. You know, Magic the Gathering card game.
That was my biggest product. That paid my rent.
Yeah. So, I mean, and he used to have big, huge pre-releases. And, you know, we even filmed one live for him one year. And then the last couple ones, the crowd just hasn't been there. So I don't know if they drifted on to somewhere else or what. You kind of have to keep continuously reinventing yourself and promoting yourself. And, you know, you can't just sit back and expect people to come. You know, you've got to be active. And it's just a shame. You know, it's one of those things that, It was a great store. It was a great location. They were very friendly. You know, every time you walked in, they always greeted you, and, you know, it's just a shame. So, Tim, since you are a manufacturer, a supplier of miniatures, how does a store closing affect you? I mean, obviously, if you don't do a lot of business with one, I can't see it tremendously affecting you, but still, it's an outlet. You know, that a potential outlet or an outlet, or just. Like in this case, this store, we could just bring games in, even if they didn't sell it, and play it on a table, and that got people interested. And they've had a couple of games where, you know, people have brought stuff in, and people have inquired about it, and they were able to order it from them, and they gained a couple more customers that way. So, you know, from your standpoint, how does, you know, game stores closing affect you?
That's in the local area. We have, in the St. Louis area, I would say that there are 3 game stores. One is considered South County, one is more central, and the other one is in St. Charles County, which is about maybe 15 minutes from me. And in those, there are different genres, games that are played, and a lot of them are card games, a lot of them are Bolt Action, Infinity, that sort of thing. But there aren't many that play modern.
Yeah.
So that it's funny because what I'm doing right now is I'm working on building I haven't decided if it's 3x3 or 4x4 table for Syria. And my plan is to travel to the different stores and run games with the miniatures and just, you know, show people, hey, this is modern, that sort of thing.
Sure.
Now, to that, though, I have just recently started sending stuff to stores in the United States to sell on their shelves. So when I was a kid, the local store was everything for me because it was just, that's where I was at. And I knew that, you know, every weekend there was a game on a Saturday and then role playing on the evening and or whatever. And that's where I've met the people that I still game with today. I think it's important to have a store. I myself would like to have one in my area, for me to have an open one. The logistics of that are huge, and the onslaught of the internet stores have completely damaged the local gaming brick and mortars. That's my opinion. But to that though, that being said, the local brick and mortar stores have to sell at competitive prices of online, and you cannot sell full retail, because the gamers come in and they'll look up the phone and say, okay, well the War Store's got this at this price. I'll just wait and buy it. Or actually, no, I just bought it right now while I'm inside this brick and mortar looking at products on the shelf. So I think that we gamers only have ourselves really to blame for the closing of a lot of the stores.
Yeah.
Because people are cheap at heart and they want products cheaper. We all do. We all want to pay less for products. But we are seeing the demise of the brick and mortars because of that. So I still would love to have my own brick and mortar store where, I have paint racks full of stuff and, I just don't see that happening right now.
Yeah, unfortunately, the internet does cause that. I mean, it used to be when I was a kid, you wanted your hands on the item, physically take it out of a store. Nowadays, with like Amazon and Walmart, you can get it in a couple days. It's like, I can wait a couple days.
Right.
That impulse buying that you had in the store, I don't think it's there as much anymore. And, it is hard to compete with online pricing when you're a brick and mortar store, because you have a lot of more overhead expenses. You've got rent and all that. I mean, it's not to say that these other online places don't have those expenses as well, but because they can sell at such a larger audience, essentially worldwide, if you are able to, you could bring in more people and offer it at a lesser price. And the margins, it's tough. There is no right or wrong answer. Personally, I like going into a store and be able to physically see it, touch it, but it is frustrating when they don't have it in stock. I don't mind paying a couple extra dollars for something if I can take it home with me right then and there. If it's a huge price difference, then I can get it on Amazon and, I can have it in a couple days. So it's hard. With a game store, you're looking at not just the retail aspect of it, but the whole experience, the gamer experience. I think people, if they feel like this is my store and I have a really good time every time I walk in here and I always feel welcome and they're encouraging to all the games I play, I think that helps a lot as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So getting out of the depressing topic.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, no problem. Chris, you have something on here for 3D printing in the hobby and the industry in general. So why don't you enlighten us on that one?
Well, I've been doing a lot of 3D printing lately, and I've been seeing a lot of companies like Elheim and others, and Tim and Special Artists and Service Miniatures, using 3D printing. And then, I'm a member of a lot of Facebook groups where it's a lot of the groups are 3D printing of scenery. I'm now seeing a lot of 3D groups for miniatures as well.
Yeah.
And how is that changing how we play our games? How it changes for the industry? Like in Tim's case, and where do we see this going? Like I spent the last week printing parts and scenery parts for my son for his Star Wars games, and he's building buildings next weekend. And this week I spent a lot of time, printing some vehicles that I haven't seen in 28 mil. I've seen some 148 scale kits for a couple of the vehicles, but like a BTR 4 that's made. I think the only government that uses is Ukraine, so I haven't seen any model kits for one that are in the proper scale. So I printed one that, it's the details okay. I have to add doors and stuff to it because the guy forgot to put doors on it. But other than that, it's a good representation on the board for me.
Yeah.
But, where do we see 3D printing in the next, let's just say 5 years?
Well, that's a
because
good question.
I see a lot more people with the cost of printers coming down,
Mm-hmm.
buying printers and printing their own scenery,
Yeah.
dungeons or whatever. And now I'm seeing a change even in the last year or 6 months even, that people are now using their printers to print miniatures, and the miniatures are not that bad. Like I remember 8 months ago looking at printed miniatures, and they were like terrible,
Yeah.
terrible. But now I'm seeing. I can think of one printer. I won't mention it, but I can think of one printer that a lot of people are buying right now because of the cost. And I see these people printing miniatures, and I'm looking at these miniatures going, wow, how things have changed even in the last 6 months.
Yeah.
What do you think, Tim?
Oh, well, definitely cheaper liquid resin printers. That, the market with those reducing in price, as well as having a bigger build envelope, that is what's the current future of 3D printing. You getting away from FDM, filament distributed material, and doing SLA, which is you're using liquid resin in a vat where the print head goes down into the resin and a laser shoot up from below it, curing layer by layer. That's it. And the only thing that's stopping it right now is the price of the build size, depending upon, you can't, there are printers right now. There are consumer printers right now. I think they're about maybe $4,000 that has a big build size. I personally wouldn't buy that printer because the company is difficult, but it's going to be there. Just like I have some FDM printers that have a 12 by 12 build. But like I said, liquid resin is as soon as the resin becomes cheaper and the printers themselves become cheaper, that's it. And hopefully the speed of them, the speed. Oh, hopefully.
That's what I want. Like I do some printing for different people and locally, and I tell them it's not the material, it's the time.
It's the time on the printer.
Yeah, it's the time on the printer.
Yeah, that's been my biggest issue is the time it takes to print some items. Because one of my favorite companies to print scenery from is printablescenery.com. They make amazing terrain files, and it takes forever and a day to print those. It could be because of the printers that I'm using. The Monoprice Mini version 1 and then the Select Plus. I did remember this time, Chris. It was Select Plus.
Yeah.
So my question to you, Tim, since you are a manufacturer of miniatures, are you concerned that these printers are becoming better and better and people are able to print pretty good quality minis now at home?
Well, you still need to have good renders. You still need to have good files. So, and that's a whole other discussion with, what do you do with your files? And the minute you sell them to anyone, you've lost control of that file.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think there'll be some kind of digital rights management with that?
There's going to have to be. And when companies like Games Workshop, when they get to the point of they are selling a file for $35 or $40 or whatever for the figure, and along comes the digital license, that's when they're going to lock it down.
Yeah.
But then, thankfully, there'll be people in China and Russia that will crack that, and then you'll be, they'll be hacked. But you know what? As far as vehicles go, God, please, the more the better, because working vehicles, it's a lot of work. Getting vehicles done is a lot of work because you've got all these different parts, and they have to be scaled right, and they have to be cleaned up. doing vehicles is not my favorite thing, to be honest with you. I prefer infantry. I prefer smaller, stowage items. Like I got a ton of new stowage that I just got done printing, and my company is going to cast them and all that sort of stuff. So the smaller stuff's great. It's just
So I have a request for you, Tim, for a next vehicle.
Sure.
Can you do
the
a Chinook for me, please?
See, and that's the thing. I've got that Osprey, and that's a 150 scale Osprey, but there's no way in hell I can print it on. Well, I guess I could, but if doing an FDM print, it is what it is. It's FDM. Yes, it's going to have lines, and yes, there's going to be more work to it. But what the hell else do you want? Oh, what do you
Yeah. No, I want plastic injected molding, and
and if anything, that would be awesome if they started having some sort of bench top, hobby top plastic injection machines.
Wow.
That's what I personally have been looking at for my own company. Yeah. And then that's a whole other technology with metal molds and all that sorts of stuff. But I think if anything, that could be the future. If you have a plastic injection molded at a bench top type size, that would be awesome for our hobby.
There you go. There's your angle of business. So you get somebody to develop the injection molding machines for home use, and you can create the molds and sell the molds. Because they wear out eventually. So you can always have returning customers.
Mm-hmm. Yep. That's true.
Yeah. Speaking of vehicles, our buddy over at Full Battle Rattle there, Tim.
Yes.
Got a Lav 3 coming out.
Yep.
And he was telling me the exact same thing you're telling me. Vehicles are just what a pain.
Well,
so much to it.
Yeah, we were going back and forth discussing that vehicle before he made the final decision where he was going. So I do understand. I do understand the pain points, and the biggest thing is what I don't think a lot of people understand is when you design a vehicle, it has to be designed a certain way so it can be molded properly.
Yeah.
And if it's not designed a particular way, then you have to have the artist to change that and make modifications. And if you don't have those artists working for you, then you're now looking at lots of money to get them rendered different. So it's like, a Dozer B, you've got it. It looks really, really cool. But now I have to sculpt it and design it so that it can be casted and molded and casted for production. That's a whole other. And then what do you give up? What do you give up for quality? What do you give up for game ability? Vehicles are a pain.
Undercuts on a model.
Undercuts. Yep.
Oh.
That sort of stuff. Right. Yep.
So I have to say, one of the nice advantages to 3D printing, just to kind of close out this topic, is it helps bring back to life some miniatures or parts that are no longer available, i.e. one of my favorite games, and something we talked about last week, is I like micro scales, like 3, 6, 10 mil, and Epic. I love Epic 40K. I just like the scale for whatever reason. And obviously you can't get it anymore. But on Thingiverse, there's a whole section you can print just about anything. So, I literally went into an auction at a game store, and it wasn't an auction, it was like a bazaar. And this guy had a table full of Epic 40K stuff, and I said, how much? And he goes, for what? I said, for everything. He's like looking at me like, really? I said, yeah, everything. So I bought the whole table. But I was still missing quite a bit of, pieces. So now you can just print them. Because it's no longer in production. I don't know if GW has any claim to it, but, they don't call it exactly this is Basilisk or anything. It's Basilisk-like or, some, I don't know how they do it. But so you can print up your minis and, you can supplement to the collection because when you go on eBay and you look at Epic 40K, there's some people asking some astronomical prices for some of that stuff.
Oh, yeah.
You know, so in that aspect, it kind of keeps some games that are no longer in production, but people like to play, still alive, because it gives you an availability of it. So 3D printing definitely has advantages. It'll be interesting to see where it goes in the future. So there leads us to our next topic: plastic, resin, or metal. What do you mean, Chris?
Well, I want to know what people prefer, because we're seeing a lot of plastic nowadays.
Yeah.
But we've also, seen a fair bit of resin.
Yeah.
Some of that resin's good resin, so it's really bad.
Not so much.
Yeah, not so much. But then you've also, I'm also thinking in plastic, we see a lot of PVC out there right now for miniatures, for games.
It's funny that you say that, because I'm going to ask this to Tim in a second. I'm actually holding a mini from Mythic Battles Pantheon. One piece plastic. Is this PVA, Chris, or is this a hard plastic?
I think that's a hard plastic.
Yeah, and it's amazing. I don't really see mold lines. They've done a really nice job with these. And I know a few people, and this is directed towards you, Tim, because you do yours in metal. They like one-piece plastic minis. And so they're wondering, why do people still use metal? And obviously, I think it's a production cost. Because, there's the whole pinning of some, and cleanup. And so this question's to you, Tim. If you had any material you could work with, what would you produce?
Well, and this is actually one of the topics that I wanted to talk about, that maybe we can go further into it on our next podcast.
Okay.
But, the casting company that now I'm partners with and part owner of, we do a lot of resin castings. We do a lot of resin figure castings for companies in Europe. And why they like resin is, well, one, we have the technology that we can spin cast miniatures in resin. They look amazing. But two, the weight of them is so for shipping, for postage, it's a lot cheaper.
True.
So I honestly think what's going to happen is, if for companies that do not have plastic injection molding, they're going to be doing resin. I can spin stuff in resin pretty fast, just as metal, but it's a psychological thing, as well as now a lot of the resins are becoming heavier, so that there is weight to them. But a lot of guys like that heft of a metal figure versus a resin figure or a plastic figure, because you see guys adding washers or metal under their bases of a plastic, say, Warlord figure.
Right.
So I think definitely the future, we're going to see a lot more resin or plastic. It's just for the bigger companies, it is cheaper. The cost for plastic is the metal molds. Getting those molds made, there's a huge cost, a huge thousands of dollars getting those made. But once you got it made, those suckers aren't going to break. And you can just keep shooting plastic in it all day. I mean, look at all the old Monogram and Tamiya model kits that were made in the 60s that are still being produced today.
Yeah.
So if it was up to me, I tell you, I like resin because the technology has changed with the resin, and it's really showing detail, or really high quality plastic. Yeah.
I'm in agreement with that.
But I asked my group, okay, what do you guys want? Metal or resin? And it was about 60 or 70-30 metal.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, there's nothing wrong with metal. It's just, I don't know, sometimes when you have to glue parts, you just can't get the joints to glue, and then you're pinning.
Yeah.
Sometimes your paints want to stick. Sometimes they don't.
Yeah.
They chip. But you have resin that it can be very fragile if you accidentally drop one. And plastics,
especially with thin pieces.
Yeah, and then plastics, they can bend easily. Deform. You can see some mold lines that details can end up being soft, and there's undercuts that you can't do, and so I don't know. I think technology will definitely, as it advances, we'll see different advances in miniature technology as well. But I do know a lot of people that like plastic just for the ease of it. So it'll be interesting to see. It really would.
Yeah. I know, like, to go back to when I was manufacturing miniatures, I started out with metal, and the cost of the metal skyrocketed. And then I switched to resin.
Uh-huh.
And the other benefit, and like Tim said, is the shipping.
Mm-hmm.
My shipping cost and the customer's shipping cost went drastically down going from metal to resin. And the quality is still there with the resin. It in some cases it's superior.
It's better.
Because the detail is just so much crisper.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. So our last topic of this show is scenery in our games. What do you prefer, home built or kit? That's a loaded question. Who came up with that one? Was that you, Chris?
I did.
Okay.
I did. Because I'm building all the scenery right now. And me personally, I'm okay with kits, but I'm more the builder hobbyist.
Uh-huh.
So I love building home built stuff, and seeing other people's home built stuff. But there are kits out there right now that are phenomenal. And some of them are, Miniature Building Authority, to name one company.
Yeah.
That have amazing looking buildings, and especially in resins. And then you got the MDF manufacturers, and there's lots of those. And some of them are there's more than one company now that makes pre-painted ones.
Mm-hmm.
And then you got companies that are making in the plastic covered foam. And it's pre-painted or pre-done or pre-printed or whatever. I personally still like building my own, but I know that a lot of people, they like the kits. They're more gamers. They want to just put it together, throw it on the table, and then play. And they want it done. And I can see that. But what do you guys prefer?
Well, that is a loaded question, like I said, because it depends on what I'm doing. Obviously, some of them, like Miniature Building Authority, where I can get and all I got to do is paint it, weather it. I can do a decent building in a day,
Yeah.
Kits, Foreground makes really good kits. I'm working with Walt over at Impudent Mortal. He's got some really good stuff coming out, but they're on different levels. Walt makes some really good terrain that's really geared towards entry level, and he's ramping up to, up the complexity of his kit somewhat to kind of, go with Foreground and maybe Sarasa a little bit. He's working on a mid-America, 19th century American Civil War-ish period right now that he sent me some to review. We're working on a project for Modern, actually. So we're going to bring out two pretty nice terrain pieces. I guess I could talk about them. I keep hinting towards it. So the first one's going to be a huge container ship that'll be multi-level. You can
nice.
raid,
awesome,
and then come, go onto the deck through the containers, go to the next deck. You can work from the bridge down through the tower and then down into the hold itself. So you'll be able to multi-level fight. So you can have your SEALs or SAS, do a fast rope or a water insertion and take over the ship that's been captured by Somali pirates, as an example. The other one we're working on, and this is kind of our big pipe dreamish one, is we're designing an oil derrick, an oil rig off of deep water. Nice. So you can do a raid. So again, have you guys ever seen the movie Folks with Roger Moore?
Yeah.
Back, when he had that special group that, when they took over the oil derricks. So that's where the idea came from. And I'm like, we were talking one day and going, what can we do that would be a centerpiece of a table at a convention or a game show or a game store? Why not an oil derrick? We can have a helicopter pad. We can have the actual tower. We can have the crew quarters, and you fight level to level to level. And, so it'll all be in 28 mil scale. So it'll be big. But, that's what we're working on.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So it just depends. When I play Lord of the Rings, I have the Minas Tirith set from GW downstairs, but in the back of the old books, it tells you how to build like Helm's Deep and some of the other things from scratch. It just depends. You know, do you have the time, the inclination to do it?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I prefer right now for my time. I prefer the kits, but I heavily mod the kits. So, you know, Sarissa, those kits. I was looking at Impudent Mortal because again, I'm doing this town in Syria and I want destroyed buildings. So I'd like to talk with him about getting some of his models so that I can throw on my table. And it's funny because you just ticked off the two boxes that I had personally, my own personal projects that I wanted to do as well. And I'm glad you're doing them because it's definitely needs to be done. And I that excites me to hear about the oil rig. Definitely, it's there was a company a couple months ago that was doing a Kickstarter for one, and it was more like sci-fi 40K ish. And I almost bought into it, but I thought I'd have to change out every friggin' door and all this sorts of stuff. So I'm like, okay, that's perfect. And you know what? I will pay the $300 or $400 or whatever that the expected price is going to be for it because I understand the amount of time and work that goes into building it, researching it, drafting it, and then putting it into production.
Yeah,
so you know, not everyone is going to buy something that big for the price value, but you know what? That's okay.
Yeah,
I wouldn't. You know,
it'd almost be like you know, put a special tag on it because it will be kind of expensive, like collector's edition or premium edition or something. You know, some tag.
Put me down for one right now.
All right. I'll let Walt know. He'll get right on that.
And you know what? Special Artisan Service Miniatures will have pictures using that rig.
Whoa. There we go. It's all falling into place now.
That's right.
All right. Well, guys, I think we're going to wrap this show up. I want to thank Chris and Tim. And it was a really great show. I really enjoy having these conversations when you get a couple more people in there. It really opens up. And to all of you out there listening, we really want to have you guys participate in the shows as well. So make sure you're commenting. Bring us ideas, any suggestions, anything out there. Put them in the show notes down here on the YouTube channel or on the Facebook page, SitRep Podcast. You can put them in Walkabout Games. That's Chris's page. And Tim... you can send Tim a message, especially if you have any questions regarding any of the miniatures he does, or if you have ideas for future projects, give him a shout out too. So until the next time, Chris, Tim, I appreciate you being on with us.
Yep, it was a lot of fun. Thanks, guys.
A lot of fun, G.
And as we say on the SitRep, we're RTB, we're returning to base, and we'll see you on the next week's show.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.